Hello Internet and welcome to this day in history for the 7th of October. We are today in 1571. For almost 300 years, the Ottoman Empire has run wild in the eastern Mediterranean with their fleets, of course, in the sea and their armies on the land. Particularly on the sea, no Ottoman fleet had suffered defeat for almost 200 years at this point, and it was clear that the Ottomans felt it was time to truly expand into the Italian and North African domains of their enemies, such as the Papal States, the Spanish Empire, the Republic of Venice, and so on. Despite the Ottoman naval supremacy, the Western powers could of course not just stand by and let that happen, especially since there was of course also the religious aspect of the whole thing. This was Muslims against Christians, and the Muslims had basically been expanding constantly. Of course, even far more, there's just the simple political. No one wants to be conquered by their greatest enemy. So despite the fact that all of Europe was at the same time embroiled in the Protestant uprisings and rebellions following the Reformation, the primary enemies of the Ottomans, which it was the Empire of the Spanish Habsburgs, the Republic of Venice, and the Republic of Genoa, managed to couple together a rather large fleet and sail out to meet the invading Ottoman naval forces. The Christians, for once, actually had a bit of success. Their fleet was about the same size as the Ottomans, and at the same time they had ships that could carry a lot more artillery than the Ottomans have. There are rumored that the Western powers had about 1,800 cannons for only about 750 Turkish, and the Turkish had not really that much artillery ammunition aboard their ships. Also, while the Turks were strongly equipped on a pure sailor basis, most of their oarsmen, since this was galleys back in the day, were of course slaves. Now, slaves can absolutely do a good job, but, you know, there's also just a matter of motivation. Not, of course, to mention that the Ottomans, for some reason, seem to have had a very small number of janissaries aboard their ship. These were the eras where you still basically took your ships up to other ships, rammed them, and sent your soldiers over to clear them ship by ship. And it seems that the Janissary Corps was not exactly giving their best to the Ottoman fleet in this particular battle, while the Spanish Tercio regiments was on full strength, heavily outnumbered their opponents, and was, quite frankly, at the height of their glory at this particular time. Anyway, on the 7th of October 1571, the two fleets met at Lepanto. I am not going to go that much into detail with the battle. One day I'm probably going to make a full video about it, since it's one of those recognized turning points of the European history. But suffice to say that the Ottomans suffered a crushing defeat, the largest and most important naval defeat they could possibly be said to have ever suffered, and definitely the worst defeat they ever suffered, up until the British absolutely destroyed them in the Greek Wars of Independence 250 years later. But the important thing is, of course, what this did. The thing is, this was back when the Ottoman Empire was still at its height and still very, shall we say, resilient in the face of defeat. 6 months later, they have more than managed to rebuild all of the ships they lost and regain the advantage in the Eastern Peninsula. In fact, when peace was finally decided, the Republic of Venice, which was their primary opponent, in fact had to sign the peace treaty from the loser's perspective, and in fact never really regained the power they had had up until this point. So why was this battle so important? Well, this battle was so important because, again, it was a check against Ottoman hegemony, against Ottoman expansion. While the Ottomans did sort of expand after this, it was primarily down in the areas around the North African coast and up the Baltics, as they shifted their offensive to land-based warfare against the Austrian Habsburgs rather than at sea. So this is the battle that sort of, again, one of those battles that can to a certain degree said to have saved Christian Europe. It created a status quo where the Western powers held the western part of the Mediterranean and the Ottomans held the eastern parts of the Mediterranean, but at least did not really anymore expand into the Western sphere of influence, thus giving the Western powers a chance for a breathing room to sort out their own initial difficulties before the resumption of the wars in the 17th century. Anyway, the Battle of Lepanto on the 7th of October for 1571 is this day in history. Until next time, I hope this has been of interest to you. I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.